so excited to be talking to you today because we're talking about your new album, Seamonster. And it feels like really like, you know, we're doing Radio Gateway today, talking about an album. But I guess before we go into talking about your album, a lot of which is about your recovery from childlessness and how Gateway Women helped you with that, I think it'd be really nice, you know, you and I know each other really well, to kind of, but maybe to talk a little bit for, you know, for our viewers and listeners about, you know, how you came to be childless, you know, what it's been like for you.
Yeah. Well, probably in common with a lot of people, a series of relationships that never worked out. I probably had my last kind of serious relationship that sort of broke up when I was about 35. And then really between the ages of 35 and 44, I was pretty much single, really, apart from a few months here and there. And in that time, I did a lot of internet dating, like a heck of a lot. And I suppose I never really, I'm a bit of a, bit of an optimist, and I don't think the passage of time and the fact that this wasn't happening to me really sunk in. Mm-hmm. I kept thinking, oh, you know, it's fine. I've got ages. It's going to be fine. I'll meet someone.
That's what everyone keeps telling us.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Exactly. And in fact, I think I do remember in my late 30s feeling the need to, I suppose, for the first time to kind of express it, but I felt like I didn't know what to say. I felt like I didn't want people to feel sorry for me because I didn't have a boyfriend. So I didn't want to say, oh, I feel sad that I'm not, you know, maybe not going to have any kids, because then they would have said, then it would have all been about not having a boyfriend. Right. And I didn't want to hear the kind of, oh, well, you'll meet someone and don't try, you know, you're trying too hard, you're not trying hard enough, all that stuff. And just the fact that people would tell you had ages, which it kind of didn't really feel like you did have. But, and in that time, funnily enough, I left, which I'm sure is a lot to do with the fact that I didn't have any children. I left my job and as a doctor, and I went off to study music, which was something I'd always wanted to do, but I'd sort of buried it quite, well, really deep, because it wasn't the thing that was expected of me, I suppose. And that, in a way, that coincided. I was 37 when I went to do that, and I was in London for 2 years. So that was quite an unusual sort of experience, in the sense that most of the people that I met were a lot younger than me and weren't in this position that most of my friends and family that I was leaving behind in Scotland were, you know, in terms of having kids and everything. So that was quite a nice, even though I sort of almost didn't realize it really, it was quite helpful in terms of putting me in a completely different situation, because people weren't talking about kids, and I wasn't thinking the whole time, I haven't got this thing, you know. But also, in a way, also it was quite difficult to meet someone in that situation, because everyone was a lot younger and it was all quite transient, and I knew I was going to come back at the end. And so anyway, then time went on, and when I was 44, I met someone who, I guess he was the person that I'd cared for the most for all that time, really. So in a way, I suppose I remember thinking, about 42, I remember there was an actual physical feeling inside me shifted, and I remember thinking, oh, that must be it, like the passage of my desire to have kids, because it actually felt like a weird, I can't really describe it, but like a weird physical inside feeling.
Okay.
And it was like some sort of physical drive to have them. I think it was 42, it went. And I remember thinking, oh, that's it. Great, I'm over it. It's, you know, I'm cool, I can get on with the rest of my life.
Wouldn't that be lovely if it was that easy?
I was so naive. And which is why I suppose it took me so much by surprise when I met this chap and he had 2 kids. And I know he didn't want any more, because he told me at the beginning, even though I didn't think, I remember saying to him, but I'm all right with it. I don't want any, I'm fine. And that was past, you know. And then as time went on, I think it was a mixture of caring a lot for him, and then also because he had quite young children, and just how it felt when we would hang out, the 4 of us, and all of that stuff just coming to the surface that I just, you know, had no idea that I felt or needed to feel, or any of those things. And eventually he didn't really, it was hard for him to understand what was going on for me, because I didn't really understand it myself. And I think he just wanted someone that he could have some, you know, have a nice time with, not someone who's basically permanently in tears, which is how I was. And I had this thing in my head all about, I wish we'd met 10 years ago. I wish we'd met 10 years ago. And I just, it's like I just couldn't stop thinking it. So once we split up, in a way also, I knew we needed to split up, because I knew that when I was with him, I wouldn't have the space to, I knew I needed space for something. I didn't know what, but I knew I couldn't do that with him because he wanted me to be okay, basically. And I knew I wasn't okay. So once he split up, you know, I then bought some books, like this book by a social worker called Never to Be a Mother, which although it was quite harsh, I think it was just all about the reality for me. It was about just facing something which actually had happened a few years before, in a way. I wasn't going to be a mother from a few years ago, but I obviously hadn't grieved for it, and I didn't know anything about that. So
I often talk to women who say, you know, but I can't have them anymore, or I'm too old, so, you know, I should be over it.
Yeah.
And I often say, well, you know, grief is the journey from knowing we can't have children to kind of in our belly knowing. Understanding to the emotional acceptance.
Yes.
That is the journey of grief. And it's like, but it's not logical. What, I can't have them. Why should I be so upset about them? It's like, grief isn't an emotion. It's not logical.
Yes. It's like, it feels like something, in a way, it almost feels like something at some stage you have to go through it to do with this. It doesn't really matter, like for everybody, it's at different stages of when it's going to be, but it has to be at some point.
Well, it hopefully has to be at some point, because if we don't go through it at some point, then we're always in it.
Yes.
At some level. I mean, I've worked with women, you know, older than us, in their, you know, their 60s and 70s, you know, one even in her 80s, had kind of lived in this sort of fugue state for decades. Not really having the support internally and externally, which is what I say, you need to do your grief work.
Yes.
Internal strength and external support.
Well, that's the other thing. I think until you, I think it's the thing about identifying something. As soon as you can identify it, I mean, isn't not that it makes it go away, but somehow you can recognize it, and then you can actually talk about it. And then when you can put it into words, then, you know, you can externalize it and get support and support yourself and all these different things that you're not actually able to do before you allow yourself to think that it's real, I suppose. Which is, I think for me, I had a very strong feeling of, because I didn't have a partner and I'd never actually tried to have kids, I didn't feel that I was justified to feel.
Really, really common, that.
Yeah. I mean, I just thought, well, that's not, my situation doesn't exist. It's not real, you know.
It falls under the category of sort of social infertility.
Yeah.
You know, being childless by circumstance.
Yeah.
And although, you know, it's still not really understood sort of in the culture, women who choose not to have children are estimated to be 10% of those women without children. Women who are childless due to fertility or other medical reasons is another 10%. And then women who are childless by circumstance, you know, yours is one of those women, are 80% of those women without children.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It's a massive hidden story
of
our generation.
Yes. I think that because it's kind of, I suppose maybe that's the thing about, if you've tried to have children, so say that 10%, you can say, well, it's, you know, not that you can, obviously loads of times you don't actually know the medical reason, but the thing about the not finding a partner is it's such a kind of grey, you know, ill-defined thing to, I think that's probably why it doesn't have a sort of tidy label, does it, to say it's this, it's that. And I know for myself for a long time, I didn't realize this for a long time, but I was giving myself a huge hard time about the fact that I'd obviously made those choices. Like, I nearly got married when I was 31 and I called off my wedding, and I never regretted that ever until I got to that stage when I realized I wasn't going to have kids, and then I just tortured myself with it. over and over and over and over and over and over what I could have done, especially that I know that he's got kids. And eventually I realized, and I managed to forgive myself, and that made such a difference, you know.
I mean, part of the grieving process is really those what ifs.
Yeah.
And they are torturous. They can really drive us nuts for a while.
Yeah. And the whole time that you're doing that, you're not, that's the problem, is I guess it's just a stage of it, but the whole time you're doing that, you're not really living. You're stuck in some, you know, sort of Netherland or whatever.
Living, but you're kind of, you know, living this experience, this grieving process, which is, you know, so misunderstood and so unsupported.
Yeah.
Which kind of brings me to, you know, the reason you and I know each other is that you became a member of the Gateway Women online community, which is, you know, a private community for women like us who are childless, not by choice. And one of the things that I'm so incredibly touched, you know, on this album is that you very much, you know, explore what it was like for you to, you know, to find that support.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this album is really, I mean, it's about your journey kind of through childlessness and out into the light again. So where are you at today, would you say, with your childlessness? Or rather, not today, right now, but, you know, at this point in your life?
I'm pretty good. I mean, most of the time I would say I'm pretty good. I have, you know, difficult days like everybody, and sometimes it's strange actually. I would say I've been pretty good for like a year maybe, but then even it's strange how sometimes, like some days I think about things that would have bothered me another time that don't bother me now. And so I think from when you're really down there, you know, you can see easier how much better you feel. But then even as the years go by, there's subtle layers of it, I think, that make me think, oh, I'm more okay than I was last year. And you know,
that's been my experience as well. Is it's usually in retrospect when I go through a situation, and after I've gone through it, I'll go, oh, I handled that really differently. Something's really shifted.
Yes, and the things that I used to notice, I was thinking this the other day, where somebody was talking about, I can't remember, somebody, I think it's somebody, a child being born, or all these situations where you're like hyper, you know, even when it's nothing to do with you, you're just hyper responsive to all of it. And it's something, I can't even remember what it was, but I just remember it didn't even, I kind of registered it, but it just kind of, it's almost like I thought, no, I'm not going to actually pay any attention to that even. Because I know that it's still not completely comfortable, but the fact that you can actually choose to do that, because when you're right in it, it's like you're just raw, I think, aren't you? Everything comes at you, and you can't, you know, you just can't.
It feels like it's just full of triggers.
Yeah, all the time, and I had quite a long period of time where I've got a lot of nieces and nephews, and I found it quite difficult to be around, not them, but around them with their parents, you know, with my siblings and the family, you know, all that kind of thing. And Christmas is still, you know, actually 2 Christmases ago was the first one that was a lot better. So that's a good, I always think that's quite a good indicator. But I can be around them mostly a lot more. And that was really important to me, because, you know, it's hard when you can't do that. So generally I would say, yeah, good.
Well, that's lovely to hear. Well, one of the things I'm really noticing at the moment is, you know, a lot of women that I know, who've either kind of done my courses or programs, or I know through the online community, you know, many of them now, you know, like you and I, are kind of coming out the other end and are, you know, embracing their plan B, whatever that looks like. And goodness, it varies, you know, sometimes it doesn't look like anything. It's just how
Yes,
it's so exciting. It's like, well, you know, it's so lovely to feel this sense that there are so many of us now, you know, coming out the other end, and perhaps speaking about it as you've done, you know, creating work around it, whatever it might be. And I feel that those pieces of work and our presence in the world is going to be such a support to those younger women coming up behind us.
Yes.
You know, the next, I think of, you know, the millennials. You know, they would have been, you know, a millennial girl would have been my daughter.
Yes,
And for
yes,
those ones coming up behind us, I just love the fact that we're going to be visible. They're not
yes.
going to be so alone as we were.
And I think, I mean, you know, to be in that situation, and even if you had some, even if you were in your 30s and you were worrying that you weren't going to have any kids, and then it still did happen to you, I think just having that dialogue out there about it,
Absolutely,
you know.
having it out there, yeah.
So if you were in that situation, or if it did actually happen to you, that there's someone who's been there before, has talked about how it feels, has, you know, in a sense normalized it, I suppose. And I think I don't know, it just changed the whole experience, I think.
Well, because the cultural narrative is you'll never get over it.
Yeah.
Your life will be destroyed and you'll never get over it. And of course, that's the message that grief tells us. Because it is a death. You know, this is a form of death. We are grieving not just our children's that we longed for, but also we're grieving the life we dreamt of. You know.
And I always think there's like a two, because on one hand I always think it's like I always feel that I want people to understand how much it hurt, I guess, how much I felt it, how much people do feel it. And on the other hand, I also want to feel that there is life, you know, that there is life without children, and then that can be valid as well. I don't want, it's like you feel, I don't want the pity from people that says, oh, it's terrible that you couldn't have kids and that's such a shame, because you've still got to carry on living, haven't you? So it's sort of saying, well, no, it was really important, and it you know, it was really, really hard getting over it, but I'm still kind of worth something just in myself, you know. Absolutely. And my life just as it stands is worth something, you know. Absolutely. Whatever it is you do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, you've chosen to do something extraordinary. Is Seamonster, where does it sit in your catalogue? Is it your first?
It's my third album. I recorded my first album in 2010, and then I did an EP in 2014, just 6 songs. So this is my sort of third or my second like full length album.
So I'd love to talk to you, if that's okay, about.
Yeah, that's great.
And we're going to be able to play some clips. So when people are listening to this, they'll be able to hear clips from this. So I've had it on repeat in my car. I absolutely love this album, and not just because.
Do you have a favourite track? Do you have a favourite track?
Let me think. I do love Sanctuary.
All right.
Deep Space Hibernation. Yeah, I think they're probably my 2 favourites. Sanctuary is the one that today has been today's earworm. Okay. I've definitely had Deep Space Hibernation as an earworm before. I mean, let's start with Sanctuary, because that's, you know, you told me, and I was so moved about this, that this is actually about your experience of sort of finding the Gateway Women community, and you know that I had lives carved on my heart, words on my lips, no place to say them, with arms aching to hold a child on my hips, and you gave me sanctuary. I try not to cry, because there's so much imagery as well, that sense, that line, you know, I had lives carved in my heart. And I think, you know, that will speak to every woman who is grieving childlessness. You know, it's so beautiful. I mean, obviously I don't need to say it was obviously a profound experience for you finding Gateway Women. How did being part of the community help you?
I think it's about a space where you can, when I remember when I joined, which I think is probably what everybody does. I mean, I can remember when I was thinking of joining, and I remember finding out about it and just thinking, no, I don't want to join.
The club no one wants to join, absolutely.
I don't want to join. And then I kind of kept finding, I was thinking, oh, I'll feel better soon. And then obviously I didn't. And then when I did join and I was reading, you know, started reading what other people had written, then once you've done that a little bit, you start to see that what you're feeling and thinking is not crazy, basically. It's just what everybody else is feeling for different, you know, in a different way for each person. But, you know, and it's incredible in some ways. It doesn't matter. It's almost like the reason that the journey that everyone's got to get there is so different for everybody, and yet so many of the feelings are the same.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a place where you can, I think it's the act of writing it down, and having it witnessed. I think that's really the nub of it. And I actually I ended up going on these weekends, where it was like a small group weekend where you shared things. It was all about, you had to write stories, and I realized on those, and I think it's a very similar thing, even though it's online, which is incredible, I think, is that it's about having your story witnessed, and you have it witnessed in a place where there's no judgment, and even more so, there's not just no judgment, but there's total understanding, because everybody knows how it feels. And and the fact also that people are at slightly different, everyone's at slightly different stages is really helpful. I mean, I know for me, you talked about the fact that I don't know, I suppose this was, I think when I joined it was about 4 years ago, so I'm not sure where you were at then, but I remember, maybe if you weren't fine, so to speak, you were a good part on the journey of it. And that was a huge thing, even though I didn't feel like that, and I knew it was going to take a while to feel like that. It was the fact that I realized that you could feel like that. Because I think the first time, and I think probably quite luckily, I don't think I'd ever felt a sense of loss for anything. Although, interestingly enough, I suppose when you go through that, then you start recognizing other losses that you've had that you haven't, recognized as a loss. But I certainly, and I've had a lot of episodes of depression in the past, but this was I'd never experienced anything like this, such a kind of physical, because with depression, I think it lasts a few months, and then I'd get, this was like, God, this was just, I don't know, something different.
I had the same experience, which is that I'd had quite a lot of loss and trauma in my life, and I had always sort of picked myself up from it.
Yes.
And for me, one of the things that was so scary about grief, and I didn't know it was grief, was that nothing worked. Nothing made any difference, and I just seemed to be sinking lower and lower into a pit. And and lost all capacity to feel joy.
Yes. I mean, I looked into adopting on my own, and when I decided not to do it, and about not long after I made that decision not to do it, I can remember the first day where I actually felt some joy, and that had been, I don't know, maybe that had been 2 or 3 years, I can't remember at that point, and I can remember thinking, today it feels like, life is actually, I can see that there's a point to it.
And you realise how long it is since you felt that kind of thing.
And I think that's really,
I really remember spring 6 years ago, and I was living in London, and the street had blossom trees that come out and blossom.
Yes.
And I had hated spring for the previous certain number of years, and I remember the blossom came out in the street, and it was the first year I didn't take spring personally. It's like, because it was like all of a sudden fecundity of blossom. It was like, oh, blossom, and then I thought, oh, that's different.
I know, it's funny, isn't it? It's like your reaction to things, and as you say, like, it's nothing to do with you, and yet it becomes all about what is going on for you. And
well, I mean, grief is so so intensely interior, and as you say, everything becomes about your grief. Everything becomes a trigger. Even perfectly innocent blossom on a tree, you can find it difficult to deal with. I mean, you write so eloquently about grief in your songs, and about regret, and there's a song called Somewhere New, which, do you want to tell us a little bit about it? Because I think it starts, there was time when I would do most anything to change the air I breathe, and every choice, every left and right and sweet good night, I whispered, haunted me. That's looking back at your choices.
Well, that was, and in fact that song was about when I started to feel, it doesn't sound it from the verse, but it's actually,
you're looking back in regret, aren't you?
It's actually, that was the point at where I started feeling like there was hope for the future, because of what I say in the chorus. But that there was definitely a time when I went over to that relationship where I nearly got married, and then another one, and I just went over and over and over and over, and non-stop. And what if we hadn't split up? And we could have not split up, and we could have stayed together, we could have had some kids, and then we could have split up. And Yeah, and that would have been fine. At least I would have some children. At least I would have some children. And this just went on and on and on. I mean, it was just absolute torture. And even things like, were just everything. Like, you know, well, I suppose I always wanted to do something different job-wise anyway, but just rewriting your life, basically.
And I
so
don't know
that,
about you, but for me, it was like this incredibly habitual, repetitive series of thoughts.
yeah.
Almost like a train that would go from one
Oh,
side
yeah.
to another, all the way around, come back to the original, and then just start again.
Yeah. It was non-stop. And it also carried a lot of, you know, self-reproachment. It was all about, you know, you made that decision, you're a fool, and why did you do that, and on and on. Just like
Then, you know, it
was torture.
And then it is a form of torture, definitely. Yeah. Mental exhaustion as well.
And I guess until you basically, it's about the point. It's all, I think it's your mind grappling with trying to come to terms with acceptance, isn't it? And it's like you can't,
working through all the possible solutions. Yeah. It's kind of like desperate form of magical thinking.
Yeah.
Until you get to the point when you just kind of you break through to the next stage, which is you kind of realize it is not fixable.
Yeah, exactly.
But there is this frantic mental, you know, process which is part of grief, of just all these magical ways you could somehow change the past. It's
and
so
I think the chap that I was going out with at the time that was kind of witnessing this, I think he must have thought I was nuts. I mean, it made perfect sense to me, but I mean, it was going, you can't conclude it. It doesn't take you anywhere, you know?
No. I mean, the song does go on, and this one has just the most catchy chorus as well.
Oh, I like the chorus. That's
again today, which is, you know, and the mist is clearing now.
Yeah.
That is a very beautiful image for kind of coming out of grief, because there is this sense that we are living in a sort of fog.
Yeah. It's very much what it felt like, and it was that point where I'd decided not to go, because I think the thinking about the adoption for me anyway was something that kept the possibility. Again, I wasn't ready to let go of it, you know, kept it all alive a bit longer, and a bit like, I'm a bit like that. I have to look into all the possibilities before I can, anyway, that's what I'm like, I think. So I went along to the first sort of weekend of it all, and then when I decided not to do it, I suppose it was another stage of letting go. And then I remember this feeling of just like a day when it felt like there was some meaning to the day. And that's when I knew that there was it felt like there was a point in, and things are still not okay, but I can just see a little bit that there's a way, you know, there's a way through this, and there's
the road to somewhere, and I think I see the way, and it's leading somewhere new.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other
moment. Yeah.
That's the other. Actually, the thing that was it a poem, or was it that made me think about that as well was, do you know that it's about? I think it is a couple that had a disabled child. Do you remember? And they'd written, or one of them had written, that having a disabled child was like planning a holiday to Australia, but ending up in Holland.
Right.
Which is a bit of a shame for Holland, really. But anyway, you know, that the idea that it's not what you think it's going to be, but actually it's fine. It's just different. And I'd read that somewhere. And so the somewhere new was about, because that's the other thing that I felt, and I know a lot of people write about this on the site, that they feel there's this point at which in the grief where you're maybe starting to let it go, but you don't want to, in a way, because you know that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, not the grief, not the letting go of the grief, the letting go of the.
There's the identity, and also, you know, well, what am I letting it go for? What am I moving towards?
Yes.
Often we don't yet know what we're moving towards.
No. And also the idea that something that you've wanted so much, and you know that you could be all right without it. And so I think
that feels quite blasphemous at first. I mean,
yes.
How could I get over this?
Yeah. Like it obviously didn't.
I get over this?
It obviously didn't matter that much, and also the fact that it is what you're experiencing completely, isn't it? For however long, that it's like you don't know what else to do, in a way. And you're not the same person. You're not the same you're changed, aren't you?
Absolutely.
You know. So the idea of the somewhere new was that it was somewhere new to where I thought it was going to be, but that I'm all right with that, you know. Even though I'm not quite there yet, but I'm okay with the concept, and that's like quite a lot more than I have been okay with so far.
Yeah.
You know.
And that's the mist clearing. It's like, okay,
Yes.
there is some possibility that maybe there's something new.
Yeah.
I can be open to it.
Yes.
A long
Exactly.
time we're not open to it. I mean, if someone tried to tell us, oh, maybe it's going to be okay and there'll be something else in your life. I mean, earlier on in grief, if someone says that, I mean, we would want to punch them.
I know.
There is no way this is ever going to be okay. You have no
Yeah.
idea.
Yes. Yes. It almost makes you hang on to it more, doesn't it? To say you don't know how important this is. You know, it doesn't help. It certainly doesn't help.
It is hard for people to say the right things to us.
Yeah. Yeah, it is, and it's definitely an area where I've found, you know, you speak a lot in the group about friendship, and it's something I've found really hard, like accepting that people who haven't been through it don't know what to say, or sometimes they say the wrong thing, and they're in a different space, and that kind of idea of, oh, are you not over it yet, you know, was something that a few people said or whatever, and you just think, well, I'd like to be over it. I mean, I really would like to be.
Actually, you mentioned something like that in Another Planet, and I believe
Yes.
about the relationship we were talking about. You know,
I
please
could
don't
fix
look at
it.
me like I'm from another planet. I don't choose to feel this way.
Yeah.
I never said my pain was the worst, but it's on my chest like a load of lead. And I love this line because I so appreciate. Don't you think if I could fix it, I'd have done it? I mean, if there was a pill or even a painful procedure,
I know.
you'd have done it.
I know, because you know that life's ticking you by. You're just ticking by, and you're not you're not using it because and it feels so bad. And yet this person's saying to you, you know, basically without actually saying it, but they're kind of saying, "Come on, get over it."
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they're not they're only saying that because they want you to get over it, but it's really not helpful.
Yeah, and that's that thing about it being so difficult to know what to say. And yeah, certainly in those words or other words, you know, get over it doesn't work. And you say it's if there was a way to just get over it, yeah, you know, we would do it. I mean, Seamonster, the album, sort of charts your journey, and we've talked earlier about it being, you know, that actually the track is kind of quite in the order, you know,
yes,
of that experience.
yes.
I wondered, you know, the track, it opens with Seamonster, and that's the title of the album. Do you want to tell me a little bit about this? It sounds to me like it's really that first dawning of awareness that childlessness.
Oh, Seamonster. Yeah, Seamonster. The track is I want. Interestingly, what I did was I wrote down a list of. I mean, you know, I wrote the songs at different stages and different times. It wasn't as prescriptive as this, but I did have a sense when I started to realize that I wanted to put them together. I've never done this before. I've never written an album about a subject, and I suppose it's because this was so important, and I felt I wanted to put it together into an album altogether. And so I started to write down different emotions, different aspects of it that I knew I wanted to cover in it. And so the Seamonster track is about it's about when it hits you, really, and that difference, exactly what you were saying. So it hits you in your in your head, in your consciousness, but not through your body. But it took me quite a while. You know, I was in the kind of, I wish things weren't like this, and then I reached the point where it hit me in the sense of a conscious sense, and but you're still kind of grappling with it not being like that. And the reason I called it that track and the album Seamonster is that when it was when I was with the chap with his kids, and I didn't think, I thought I was okay basically about not having kids, and over a few months of it was like the weirdest physical, I didn't know what was wrong with me basically.
Okay, yeah.
I was upset a lot of the time and I just didn't know, and looking back it seemed to me like I'd buried, you know, my my emotions about it, buried my grief, and when it came to the surface, it was like a sea monster, because it was down in the depths of the stuff at the bottom of the ocean, and it came up, and it muddies everything, and it's you can't ignore it. It's a sea monster,
I'm imagining it with lots of tentacles.
Well, it's kind of
lots of different areas of your life, and
it's kind of out to get you, even though it isn't really, but it's certainly, like, you cannot ignore this thing any longer, and that's sort of what it was like. But it took me months of, like, what's wrong with you? I don't know. What's wrong with you? I don't know. To sort of eventually put even words to it.
Really kind of come up from the depths to the
yeah.
You could put a language to it.
Yeah, definitely. It took me a long time, and I think that's one of the strongest things about gateway women, and about people speaking about it, because I think if you know it exists, then at least that's a start, isn't it?
It's a huge start. I mean, for me, when I found out what I was experiencing was grief, it was the most life-changing and important thing to find out. And so many women who come to Gateway Women find out through my work or through the book, that.
And you think about what you're saying about older women that have been just literally carrying it around, and probably experiencing grandchildren, and for everyone else, and all
heavy load to carry. It's too heavy for us to carry alone. We need each other to help carry this, and find a way then to put it down. Although I do believe part of it, we will carry forever.
Yes,
and also that's okay.
Yes.
The love for my children lives on in my heart.
Yes.
It's no longer painful to hold.
Yes, it's finding peace, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like I've expanded my identity to include my childlessness.
Yes.
So my childlessness is no longer kind of overtaken my identity.
Yeah, or something you want to sort of bury or push away, or
it's there. It's part of who I am. It's part of my story. But it's no longer who I am.
Yes.
It's part of who I am.
Yes.
Kind of move from the foreground to part of my context.
Yes.
And I think that's what that's part of what grief does.
Yes.
Well, it'd be wonderful to talk all day, but I guess we should bring this to a close, and maybe we could talk a little bit about one more track, which is Deep Space Hibernation. I love the video.
Oh, thank you.
You've had some great fun with those videos. So
I'm really making the videos, actually.
Yeah, it shows actually. It shows that you're enjoying them. So where does Deep Space Hibernation sort of fit in the story of your recovery from childlessness?
It's really, I heard a news story on the radio about the Rosetta probe that had been put to sleep for 2 years in its mission to land on a comet, and I was in that stage, or sometimes I sometimes don't write songs when I'm actually in fact, I find it quite hard to write songs when I'm in the thing that I'm in. I write them afterwards. So I think I was probably already out of that stage, but that feeling of, it was very much about the feeling of sort of numbness, of knowing that knowing and hoping and knowing that I was going to get better, back to my normal self, whatever that is, but I kind of knew that there was a process to it, and in fact it might even be, I don't know if it was then, because I remember, oh no, it probably wasn't then. I remember the first time that I felt better, and then I felt not so good again, and being quite shocked that it doesn't just go woo, it's sort of like this.
Yeah, that's a real bugger, that one is.
But again, the group was fantastic for that, because I'm a bit of a kind of, oh, I'm fine now, everything's fine, but it's just, it does this, doesn't it, but yeah, that was the stage of really of when everything just feels numb, really, a bit like I used to get depressed, and there's an awful lot, I think, an awful lot of similarity between depression and grief, but they're different, they're not the same, because I always think when I was depressed, I couldn't actually say what I was depressed about. Whereas with this experience, anyway, I could say, I know it's exactly what it's about, And this kind of went on a lot longer for me anyway. But that feeling that you just want to hibernate, that you just want to, the pain's here, and you just want to curl up in a little ball and wait for it all to pass, because you don't know how you're going to get through it, and get up every morning and face the world, you know. So the idea of this, you know, thinking, well, if a rocket can hibernate for 2 years in space, and funnily enough, I had a review for the video where I never really thought about this before. It's funny, isn't it? But the guy who did the review, and generally people have, one thing about the album that's been really interesting is that I've been able to, I've been very sort of open about what it's about. And that's quite interesting, because that's almost given me that's almost helped me a bit more along the journey, because it's making it public. It's the witnessing thing, isn't it?
It's been a huge part of my recovery.
Yes.
Being open. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, this chap was saying how he sort of said something like, oh, well, we all know a time in life where we want to get away from things. Well, Chiara takes it one step further and goes into outer space. And I never thought about that, as I was thinking more about the sleep with the deep space hibernation, but I never thought about the fact that, well, how about getting away from it, or how about space, you know? That would work.
There's a line in that song that really spoke to me, and I think it will speak to many women who are in, you know, who are in a deep depression, which is often, as you say, it's often part of grief.
Yes, it's hard to.
Grief has other aspects as well, but there are definitely moments of that. And you know, I felt, I wouldn't say I felt suicidal when I was at my lowest, but I did have this sense that somehow if life was to stop, that would be fine. You know, if I didn't wake up, that would be fine with me.
Yes.
And you articulated, you know, exactly that. You know, it's not that I want life to stop, it's more that I'd like to get off.
Yeah.
And it's just such powerful imagery that I think, once again, it's a sort of taboo to talk about how low this experience can take us, you know, that the dark places we can go to. And I think the more we can normalize that,
I know.
the better.
And I think that, because it seems, I mean, obviously you when you're feeling that way, it looks to you like everyone else in the world is having a fine time, and obviously it's not like that. But the whole thing that you're feeling the loss about, if you're looking at, you know, people with kids or families, it seems like their life is just ticking on. And so it's kind of carrying on. Life is carrying on, but you just want to, you know, you don't want it to do that. You know, you just don't want it to do that. But as you say, it's not, you know, sometimes you do feel that bad, but it's more a kind of, you know, you need to heal basically before you can carry on with it.
And it's like, how am I going to find the strength to heal from, you know, from this point, you know, my lowest point yet. So I've got to create a whole new life, a whole plan B. I've got to, you know, rebirth myself from the ashes. And it's like, really? I know what you mean. It's like, actually 2 years of sleep sounds like a good idea at that point. So it's been actually a great honor
thank you.
To explore the album with you, and a great honor, you know, to know you and to see how, you know, how Gateway Women has helped you forward with your journey. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how the album does. And you know, what Chiara did next. So what are your plans?
Well, I'm kind of not sure if I can find as big a concept for the next one. That's the thing that I worry about sometimes. Anyway, my plans are, I'm doing a few gigs around the album. In fact, I'm doing a gig in London. I haven't decided, I haven't got the exact date, but it's in May sometime. In the Green Note in Camden. So I was gonna, you know, be nice if some people could come along to that. And then I'm going to do a tour in the autumn time. And then I haven't really thought further ahead than that. Rather inconveniently, I have started going out with someone who lives in New Zealand. So this makes a little bit of a difference to things. Yes. But yeah, so that's as far as I've got. And yeah, we'll see.
We'll see.
Yeah. Keep writing stuff, hopefully.
So where can the viewers and listeners find Seamonster?
So it comes out on the 2nd, and from then it will be on my website, which is www.chiaraberardelli.com. And if you go to the music tab on the website, it will take you to Bandcamp. So you can also go to bandcamp.com itself and just put my name into that.
Okay.
And then it will be on Amazon and iTunes and things like that. But it's actually, sometimes they, if you're not a kind of famous artist, they actually inflate the prices a lot. So don't buy it there. Just buy it from my site or buy it from Bandcamp.
Well, I'll put these links. I'll put these links in the box and below.
You can buy a physical CD, which I will post to you, or you can download it as well.
The artwork on the physical CD is beautiful.
Oh, thank you. I was pleased with that. Yeah.
I mean, the whole production, the production values, the lyrics, you know.
Yeah, the producer I worked with was fantastic, actually.
Yeah, the backing vocals and some of the sound effects. I can't recommend this album strongly enough. So, thank you for taking the time out, Chiara, and I look forward to interviewing you for your next album, I wonder what that's going to be about, But like my next book, I'm not sure I can find another huge topic either.
Probably going to be about traveling to New Zealand.
All right then.